Welcome back to Autistic Radio Days 2024 for the 444, the drop-in. Usually every Sunday, a group of people just click on a link and they enter a web page that is a very simple version of Zoom or one of those other apps. But we turn the cameras off and we turn the microphones on mute and we listen to each other, observing from the outside in a very autistic way. On the right hand side of the screen is one of those very simple chat areas where you just write a few text words and press enter, or you just look at what other people are writing in reaction to what they're hearing people who are using their voices saying. It's just been described today in our last day of Autistic Radio Days as one of the things that we come here for as a group when we're making our podcasts. A kind of 3D experience. And you'll be interested to hear the extra pieces of Radio Days when people have talked about these things, talked about their philosophies and their feelings on life. For now, I can just relax in my seat and be quiet. And then if other people speak, they speak. And if there's big silences, we're comfortable in each other's presence. Hi, Nicola. We're recording already.
Hello.
I'm just munching on some pudding. And I think Ray's silently in the background there somewhere.
I'm just back from a walk with the dog. We got out a little bit later than we needed to. I was having a planning day with someone else, and time is time waits for no Nicola. Probably going to put the kettle on as well.
Yeah, for that last sentiment, I am pretty sure that we as autistic people experience that a bit more than other people. I think that's one of the beauties of it sometimes, though, is because part of it's being away with the fairies.
Yeah, absolutely. And easily ensnared in like fairy traps and intrigue. And I always felt sorry for the cat, that saying curiosity killed the cat. I just felt like under relatable.
Yeah, there was no reason why that should have been framed that way. You know, curiosity enhanced the cat's life and improved it immeasurably. Why did they have to go for curiosity killed the cat? It's stay in your box territory, isn't it? That's not autistic. That's against us.
Yeah, it is, and I think it is. It's our version of the New Zealand "Don't be a tall poppy." That's what one of their saying was as well. Don't be a tall poppy, don't stand out too much. And it's a little bit like over here, stay in your lane, stay in your box. Um, I think one of the things that I really struggled with before I understood myself as autistic was not was ending up finding myself inadvertently in those situations where I had come out of my box, but hadn't even realised there was a box or where the box was meant to be. But the I always found the response um, at the time. I remember always finding the response a bit hard to cope with because I felt like because I was ignorant of it, I felt like my intent was good. And whereas now, I think through understanding myself as autistic, I feel like I tread more carefully in general. It's helped me to understand um, boundaries a little bit more because I've been able to recognize where I just have a very different experience um, of a certain value or something to a neurotypical person. So recognizing myself as autistic's made me better able to read a social cue, I feel.
Um, wow, I end up with very mixed feelings from what you're saying. Um, the easiest way for me to think of you is as my daughter's age, because I think you are in the sort of same stage of things. Um, and there's a really good thing in what you're saying. You know, the positivity around understanding and coming to understanding our identities as autistic people. But when it's framed in such a way as you kind of are noticing the boundaries more, and it's, I do get that. I do get that it's useful. It's a skill. It's a way, and Raymond has different ways of expressing it about this necessary adaptation, and we're quite good at that chameleon stuffing. We and having a bit more of a autistic slant and your knowledge means that you understand how different they are to us and how we can stop treading on their toes so much. And yeah, okay, but there's another part of me that says, oh no, I hope that doesn't quash the other part of the realization that you've also expressed, and that be about a little bit of coming out in autistic spaces and being yourself and finding your own. I hope what's happening for you is something that you're finding appropriate places to be absolutely out there yourself, and other places where a little bit of guidance just stops you sticking your neck out too much, and but you get a balance between the two that hopefully is positive. I hope I worked my way around to feeling good about it from feeling worried at the beginning. I think I've convinced myself it's okay.
Yeah, and that says it is like how that looks for me is very much that I don't I don't push my energy into spaces where I know now that my full self would not be accepted. Um, and it also means that like it is the sharing sharing stuff with like trusted people and goods in like the right places and spaces is like much more of a special thing as well. Like it means a lot more now when I'm you know it has been a positive thing for me. Like I didn't. I avoid a lot of spaces now. Um, I detached from a lot of spaces now where my energy wasn't welcome, and that's been it's been such a relief.
The relief of saying, I don't fucking need this anymore. It doesn't suit me. Why am I trying so hard at this? It's shit. I'll put my energy elsewhere.
Did you
Love
hear
it.
Yeah,
that? Did you hear that though? The exhalation that Nicola gave out there. That's pure body. That's that thing that happens when you release. It was kind of lovely to hear that. It was because I try and do that myself. Find that breath.
yeah, I felt it and I recognized it, and it's just like I'm living. Like I can part of a really deep part of me now trusts me. I didn't have that before.
Note to myself when I'm editing this: make damn sure that I don't process the breathing out of this track.
Yeah, keep breathing, everyone.
Do what you want.
Oh yeah, don't if you don't want to.
No, I think I'll carry on breathing for couple more decades yet. I was talking about suicide on one of these programs. I can't remember whether it was in a 4x4 or was it a 555.
It was yesterday. Yeah.
Was it?
I
Yeah.
was going to ask you something particular there, what you thought about the government legislation proposal for assisted dying. Yeah.
Um, Morally, I have no problem with the concept of helping somebody to end their life. Um,
But I don't
I,
want to take you. I don't want to take you off tangent. So return to your own original thought. We can leave that. Park that for later.
oh God, I don't know what my original thought was. I'm happy to go wherever you are. What do I think about it? I think um, I the I am much less afraid of somebody taking my life inappropriately when I'm very old, like a shipment case. I'm much less afraid of that than I am of spending a week in agony or a month in pain or a period of grinding unnecessary suffering, which is what we are inflicting on people at the moment. So any release for people from the pain of their lives under their own control, I'm willing to accept that the safeguards are always going to be inadequate because the balance is so much in the favour of letting people die in dignity and under their own control. I'm going to arrange my own suicide package. I am definitely going to make my own suicide package. I've spoken to it with friends, and they make their own suicide package. Everybody towards the end of their lives starts to think they need to hoard some stuff together. They need to put some alcohol together. They need to work out how to go out and get into hypothermia and have control over your lives. That's how we have to do it in a DIY way now, and I think not having to do it in a DIY way is a blessing on society.
No, I was just curious why you had brought it up yesterday, and it's obviously the thought had been part of your general kind of conversation, as you've hinted there. It's something you discuss with people. Uh, as we get older, we kind of witness things with others older than us or even younger than us. So it can come into your thinking. Although, um, yeah, forewarned is forearmed and all that, and preparation and planning is sometimes essential. But yeah, it's not something that dominates my thinking really.
At the moment, it's a big deal for my family because we have somebody who is. We've seen a lot. We've seen some deaths recently, and there has been a wide variation in the experience of people's deaths. And so it's a live issue for me. But every year I get some communication from somebody through Radio Days to have a bit of a chat and a bit of a discussion and maybe a bit of a to and fro, or it could be a text conversation. And I welcome those conversations with people who are in difficult times and searching out with difficulty to find a reason not to take their own lives. So on the other side of it, I am really happy to have that contact from people, because we do this between Christmas and New Year, and I'm really happy to chat with them for a while and signpost them and do some Googling and find out what services might be open for whatever they're talking about. We have a real problem in the autistic community at all age groups, and that is a higher than average death rate through people deciding to take the final step of ending their lives. I hope that we can be part here of addressing that and finding ways to reach out to people, alleviate the causes that make people feel that low in their lives. If anybody listening to this has a thought to discuss with me, get in contact, news@autisticradio.com. Go to the website where there is a manned phone line, or text it through the autisticradio.com website.
This is such an important conversation to have, and I've been thinking and talking about this sort of thing a lot over the last year. In the peer support recovery world that I'm part of, I just finished doing a training on how it's okay to, talking about it's important that we talk about suicide, and that we can really create hope for people through having open conversations about how we survive times where, like, that escape hatch survival, suicidal thought kind of comes to us, and how did we endure that? Like, our stories, our recovery stories, have got such a lot. They've got such a lot to offer one another. And the other thing about peer support, and connecting with others, is that we can start to really talk about, like, what does it mean in our, like, communities when people who are going through big struggles are so isolated. Like, collective cares, I think, really important for us to start to think about.
I think for me the model is always goes back to the very early radio stations of Radio London, some of the black communities radio stations, and the 1980s AIDS experience of the gay community, London Gay Radio and the London Gay what was it? It was phone line. It might have been just telephone line in those days. I can't remember all the different names of the things I used to be so aware of. I personally think that there is a model that we can find inspiration from in those volunteer services that are self-created, that could, with inspiration from them, find quite a few people in the autistic community that have a good niche and a good way of dealing with things, to actually be employed to take part in those conversations. And I would look personally to invest through the charity in something that went along those lines. Funding isn't the problem. What is the issue for us all is people coming forward with a bit of time.
It's like, I think as well, there's lots of little issues and it's trying to identify them. And a huge one that I consider in my fear of aging is having to deal with doctors, like navigating the medical system, the GP trying to access like the right treatment. And I'm sure, I'm so sure I'm not alone in having felt heavily medically gaslit over the years, and finding it so difficult to know how to have the conversations to access the right treatments. The best healthcare I feel that I've received is been from like a herbal medicine practitioner, and I think if we were able to kind of access the right kind of care, perhaps it wouldn't be so daunting. But even I think there is something about autism and healthcare access.
Do you know what? I'm trying to. I've got to frame this into a story that I can say without causing anybody harm. I was aware and in communication with a person who was autistic, and they were having difficulty in calling the Samaritans because the Samaritans was a telephone-based line, and they didn't feel that they could go direct to the Samaritans. And I think there should be a line that goes from the person in the need to the service. There should be a direct line, and there shouldn't be any cuts in that line, and there shouldn't be any blockages in the line, walls in the way of any description. Access, communication, any tiny that often means an autistic person can't get that direct line to the service that they require. In this case, I would say Samaritans. And what happened in this case was the autistic person came to a friend person and spoke about it informally, and that person then gave them the confidence to not go along the straight line directly to what they needed, but to go and ricochet off in another direction and be caught, and then find their way back to where they were originally going, which in this case was the Samaritans. It seems to me we need not a gatekeeper, but sometimes a bit of a helper, a nudge, a quasi uncle or auntie or grandparent, or somebody that just gets you, realizes your struggle, and can ricochet you off to this service with a bit more confidence.
Yeah, last time I had to see like a medical person, I took a trusted friend with me, and it made such a massive difference. Like, absolute will not ever do go without somebody with me again after that. I felt like I was able to, I left actually feeling like um, I left feeling like I'd not lost my own sort of autonomy. I felt more listened to, and I felt like I didn't feel um, so. One of the things that I struggle with is feeling like the person's ridiculing me a bit when we're talking, and when there's another person there, I just think that they just have I don't know, it just seems slightly safer, and that's been yeah, that's something that I would do. But then there's the kind of privacy issue as well. Like, you have to have a trusted person that you're willing to let in, to be there with you.
I'm going to bring into the conversation a text that somebody sent. Finding some or same places is still difficult. I still get it wrong. What I'm taking from that person is that it still feels as though we're tripping over ourselves. That even the revelation that we are autistic only goes so far. There's quite a lot that comes along with the territory, building your skills up and taking advantage of it fully. It's a new job and a task in your life, a kind of new way of rebuilding yourself. So I've got a kinship with that expression that I read there in the text.
Yeah, I find that once I find a physical place once, I'm okay at going back to it, and I really like it if there's like a picture of the place that I'm going to go to when I'm on my way there. I had a friend who she's autistic, and she came over to my house for the first time today, and I sent some pictures of like where to park and then my house, and she said it was really helpful. And been noticing that more places are starting to do that as well on their websites. There's some photos of like some places have got pictures of the entrance and things, and it really it's help. I find it helps me a bit when I have to go to like a new place. But yeah, I think place isn't so difficult for me as time is what I would say to the comment.
A lot of times I've said or done the wrong things and ended with people not speaking to me.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
In a lot of places, having an autistic meltdown is an automatic exclusion.
Which makes it even more terrifying and kind of makes the pressure when you're trying to hold it in even more. Yeah, you're kind of a pressure cooker.
It really ups the ante, doesn't it? It just adds to it. I remember early on when I was first speaking to Morris, who mentored a lot along with Harry and Justin. One of the big things that goes around us as autistic people is ending up rejected and happening again and again and again. And that builds not a strengthening. Well, sometimes you can sort of pretend or work it out or make it a sort of strengthening, but for a lot of people, it's a gradual weakening and a banging and a one thing on top of another. This constant getting it wrong footing, and it puts us into all kinds of bad spins. So we made this idea, and the person expressed over a period of time being in the autistic community how they had come across a feeling of exclusion from groups. Either groups didn't want you in because they had already set themselves up, or it was easy to step on somebody's toes and you just felt an exclusion from a group and it bereft, really hurt, really hard hurt. So the first principle we had here was that if people ever go away from us in any reason, any misunderstanding, any so-called breaking of some kind of bloody taboo we didn't know, everybody is always welcome to come back, work it out. They don't have to fucking apologise. They just pick it up from where we are and just be right now, be okay. And I think the more spaces that are like that in society, the more it benefits us as autistic people, but also how it benefits the whole of society. Everybody benefits from that kind of attitude in life. But unfortunately, I think, closed doors do get closed, and we do get stuck out.
It made me think of a few things when you were talking there, and I really recognise that rejection, and how it's a trauma. It's such a trauma. Like, even though we move to different degrees, be quite solitary creatures. Like, as humans, it's primally like traumatic to us, and I think when you've dealt with it so many times, I just feel like it's almost like the old wounds get opened up when you're rejected again at times. And the thing I wanted to say about having that more open kind of for I don't know how you would describe it, but the kind of culture that you're talking about, where we have misunderstandings, we have that understanding come back, like that. I think one of the things that can shut us down is I learned something about how the resentments, times when I felt really resentful, it's when I'm needing to have like a boundary. And because I'd really struggled with having healthy boundaries, I ended up having a lot of these resentments with people. And now that I get what a boundary is, and I get how to like set them internally, I'm in less I don't put myself in situations that are going to be bad for me, so I've got more capacity for people when I do have time for them, if that makes sense.
You only need to be rejected once, and that hits hard, and it makes it difficult, in my experience, to try something new, to try and remain open. And what it ends up doing is it makes you very defensive and guarded. And even being defensive and guarded can be very helpful in many ways. It's not very good in the long term, because there's still this yearning to reach out and connect with other people, but you're frightened to break out this kind of guard, because if you do, you may get rejected again, and the second rejection may be a lot more painful than the first one. So it's just the feeling of exclusion, and even only happen once, and it lingers in the mind, and it's hard to get over, no matter what the reasons were, whether it's a misunderstanding or whether it's just someone doesn't like you at all, because they just don't. It's a kind of, it's walking eggshells in many ways.
I live in a small village, so the exclusions have left me more or less completely isolated much of the year. I don't use the phone because I can't cope with the unpredictability and demands. So I can sometimes go for days without seeing or speaking to anyone.
Well, without it sounding too cheesy or anything, am I allowed, because this is going out live, and also I might forget to cut it out in the edit if I don't, am I allowed to use your first name? Okay, I'll accept that as a no. My answer to you is I fucking feel that pain too. I've experienced it for very short periods of time in my life in total isolation. And the one thing we have to offer you is this conversation every Sunday. And it happens at 4:44 p.m. every Sunday. You can find us by going through the web page, or you can find us by any email that come from us. There's a button you press on it, and there should be often on social media posts too. And you will always have somebody to spend some time who is also autistic with. Just spend time with us. And that goes for everybody who's listening to this as we put it out for Radio Days.
Yeah, and see the comment that came in. It's so nice getting comments coming in and having them to respond to, like, genuinely. See what you know about the isolation. Well, I did a peer support training that the Scottish Recovery Network put on for us out near where I live, and along with the women's group that I'm part of, some of the people that came along to the peer support training, and it was all about how, you know, how would you, can we talk about suicide, like that kind of thing. A lot of the people, a bunch of the folk that had come along to the training were from Andy's Man Club, and I was so impressed as an outsider, and as somebody who I haven't had an awful lot of like men in my life, like before, to see them sort of caring for each other. But I was so impressed and at the way the guys were talking about how they learned to help each other and all the different little strategies that they put in place for the safety of themselves and each other. And really like grateful because I was recognizing like some of the guys that they're supporting, like how would be probably people who, when they were upset, would as a woman might be find really scary, you know, and yet they had their ways where they were able to kind of really hold space for people who had some really painful, angry, like sad feelings, and it's, I don't know, like I'm so sorry if I'm being boring, but I so love peer support. I think it is such a big key for us all, and I think that there's resources out there that we can kind of look at and look at what aspects of them would be really great in our community.
I felt really conned when I got diagnosed, because I got diagnosed pretty much on the premise that I was going to get some kind of support, which I thought was leading support. I even described it as leading support, and when I actually had to push to try and find that support and get hold of that support that was going to come after my diagnosis, I was really pissed off that nothing was going to happen. But in the meantime, I'd already found peer support with one guy with an enthusiasm called Morris, and striking that up and making sure that during the lockdown, I had somewhere where I spoke to him on, I think, Skype at the beginning, and then another different app. Him and occasionally another one or two autistic people that came through his Edinburgh and Lothian Autism Society, that he, with my kind of help at the beginning, turned online, and also he keeps it running now as an online and a in-person thing. So it's a great thing in the Edinburgh region. But the point of it is that it was him, speaking to him and Justin. Justin came along very quickly, and in fact I think Justin was there at the first time, and getting to speak to these two guys, followed later by meeting Harry. It was that. It wasn't anything out from outside, and they would have been really cheap to have facilitated. That was what I needed. It wasn't actually this mythical support that turned out to be a crock of shit, and a waste of taxpayers' money. It was the peer support is what I needed. And we've got somebody here who's actually saying to us that from day to day, there goes day after day, and they don't speak to another human being. And the reason is that they kind of feel that their autistic way of being has been rejected and scapegoated and pushed out in their own small society, where if you burn your boats, you burnt a lot of boats all at the same time. You know, I live in a small town here in the Scottish borders, so I've got some kind of idea of where you're coming from, commenter.
I was diagnosed back when I was 17, and through my parents it was, they got me, referred to the Strathclyde Autistic Society based in Glasgow, and it was a sort of support kind of organisation from memory, and I had workers and things like that they were nice, but the thing that I do recall, the real connection, the real being diagnosed and having this label on you, which is an answer to something that you were wondering about anyway. It was Asperger's syndrome at the time. Going to a new social group that they created for a Thursday, because there was one on a Tuesday that was oversubscribed and a lot of people. So it was started at the very beginning, this social group. And what was great about it was meeting other people, meeting other autistic people, and seeing how different they were from you. But they also identified with similar things to you. Things about the way you think, the way you feel, the type of hobbies you may have that some people may find strange because they see as obsessive rather than passionate, which we have talked about. Things like not feeling fitting in with society and sometimes your own family, just depending how things are. And that connection helped me kind of grow into the kind of fairly confident person I am today. I no longer go to these social groups. What was good about these social groups, just jumping about, it wasn't just going into a community hall or a leisure centre and sitting around the table. What it did is it went to places like the cinema, it went to places like the pub and take part in pub quizzes. It was basically like an adult group where, even though there was a group leader facilitating, they weren't like, they say basically, you're responsible for your own behaviour and all that, we're not your guardians. And then the people that felt that they needed additional support had their own people with them anyway. So it was a bit of normality, dare I say, into it, going out, doing activities, mostly around Glasgow because that's where the group was based. But it felt great to connect with people and do these different activities with people and get to know them and actually become friends with them, over the years. There's not many that I'm friends with now. I'm going back about 25 years now. Just kind of lost contact. But going back, just these sort of peer support, even without the facilitator. Actually, without the facilitator, it's a lot better and a lot more freer. But my point is just speaking to someone else who's autistic, and they may be totally different from you, but they can identify your struggles and identify things that you may be feeling, and that helps a lot. And it's a lot more better than therapy or medicine or whatever. It's just someone having a listening ear and understanding.
I had really good support after my diagnosis in 2014. Referred to a charity which provided what I needed. Along comes COVID, and I lost my parents, and it all changed. They changed the support they were offering to stuff that wasn't really of much use, and then they set me up so I had to leave.
Yeah, COVID in itself, including the lockdown, did change quite a lot, quite drastically, the landscape. And it must have, because it did to me, a bit differently, but you had this certain routine and you were used to it, support mechanisms, whatever you have, and it's been in place for such a considerable bit of time, and you're comfortable with it, and then it changes. It was something beyond anyone's control to a degree, and then it's never really been the same since. It's kind of returned to some sort of so-called normality, but it was a period of maybe about 2 years where you were, apart from some breaks, it was like you were stuck at home. And if you're someone that's yearning for the connection and for the routine to start back, it was a difficult thing to do, being stuck in the home, because it felt for me at that particular time like the end of the world. And being an overthinker, there was all this sort of guessing and trying to work out when things are going to change and how things are going to be when it does return to so-called normality. So it didn't help, did it?
There was no return to normality because during the COVID, my mum went into care home and my dad died, and I was about to lose my home.
I hope you don't mind me asking, did you not have an advocate or anybody to help represent you?
The advocates were biased because they were paid for by the council, so they just supported the autism team that weren't listening to me.
Gotcha. Yeah, that can happen.
Overnight, I lost all my income, just about, apart from a few pounds in PIP. I was going to lose my home. I lost everything. As far as I was concerned, my world had ended. And I did actually attempt suicide twice during that time.
It sounds so painful, and you've survived all those endings. And yeah, I ended up homeless during lockdown as well, and I really relate to that end of the world feeling, and I've really learned to just live like one day like at a time since then. I was wondering if that's your experience as well.
I had social workers telling me how I had to spend the little bit of money I had coming in, but they wouldn't help me claim university credit because it was too complicated.
Oh, that's awful. It can be so hard to get the right help with that at all, and I found it really difficult to put like my needs into words, especially like at times of stress as well.
Yeah, we were kind of lucky in the big city because you have these groups that have been around for a number of years who have these really skilled and good people who can help you with these situations and understand them. I really hope there's something like that down where you are eventually, if not now.
I eventually got a therapist independently and a counsellor independently, which are working towards the goals that I want rather than what social workers are choosing. They were shoving what they wanted on me, and they were going to charge £400 a year on top.
Excellent. Sometimes that's what it's all about, is to to get our independence.
It also brings up the question is who's the expert? The social workers, the therapists, nurses, or whatever, or is it the person who's actually experiencing the life that they're experiencing? And I think that's what sometimes is missed by a lot of people in these positions. Misunderstandings, maybe, because of certain personalities or confidence, or basically just standing up for yourself is taken the wrong way. Sometimes in a manner that people don't like, so that they want to sort of kind of stop you in your tracks and say you cannot behave that way, etc. I mean, it's a minefield alone, that sort of way. Because I know I've been in that sort of position myself in the past, where assertiveness has been taken the wrong way as more like aggressiveness, which it certainly isn't. Because when I want something to say, you probably notice on here because it's audio, my voice gets louder, and that sometimes puts people off and thinking it's a threatening thing that I'm doing, but it's not. It's just basically standing up and giving a view and just basically standing up for myself.
People often interpret me being anxious as being angry, and I've had that spread round the village.
Hearsay and gossip is very unhelpful as well, because much information that gossip is or hearsay is generally something that's been misinterpreted or even deliberately put out there as lies. It's wrong information, but it's put down as fact, and it's all done in a way to represent you, which is totally unfair. It can happen.
I only caught the end of that, but it just feels like a tough break. And through no fault of our own sometimes. As I say, I only heard the end of what you're saying there. It just doesn't work out right. It just doesn't work out fair. Communication goes wrong, and through however many times I bang my head against the brick wall, I get it wrong, and I get myself into situations I wish I hadn't got into. And in the end, it just comes down sometimes to being quite stoical about it, and seeing that as a balancing factor to kind of congratulate myself on, yeah, I got it wrong again, but I survived it again, and not to let other people control your emotions, which is a tricky one. It's a tricky one. That not letting other people control your emotions is a hard one. But I'm trying that nowadays, as much as I can. There's been a couple of times this year where I've had an outburst of some kind, and it's really spoilt the relationship with somebody. It's pushed them into a position where they can't come anywhere near me again. And I regret that. I regret that happening. But I also kind of say to myself, it would happen the same if I tried again, and maybe that's just okay. Me being feeling, buggering something up, maybe was something I needed to do. Maybe it's not my problem. Maybe it actually is the other people who feel buggered up. sometimes I wonder if we take too much responsibility for this.
I think if we I think it's really easy to end up taking too much responsibility for how a relationship turns out, because we've only got our half that we can be responsible for. And I was thinking about what you're saying there about letting other people control our emotions, but I find in my head, if I say to myself it's about not giving them responsibility for my emotions, like I find I can do more with that, because like they might make me feel a way, and I can't control the feelings that come up when they say that or do that, but I can take responsibility for that, and I can be like, right, Nick, you're going to probably see that person who's going to say that thing that you absolutely hate. So how are you going to deal with that? And or I can avoid, which I do now. I don't feel it is in a negative way though. I feel like I use my discernment now to be just like, I don't have energy for that.
I listened very carefully to what you said there, Nicola, and the elegant split that you made there, or the elegant comparison between what I said was emotions and you said emotions and feelings. I think that's a lovely way of balancing that, because I feel the word feelings means things that, well, you feel them, it happens to you, it's an experience, but emotions are kind of like often the expression or a behaviour that comes around your feelings, and they link back to each other. And I find that if I can not let myself react entirely in an automatic way, or allow other people to control the way I behave and emote, then it feeds back into a healthier position of how I feel as well. It doesn't mean I end up feeling more frustrated because I'm not creating that big emotion. It actually makes me feel calmer, in a better place if I don't feel that big emotion. It's taken me decades in my life to get anywhere close to achieving that in situations. But sometimes it just, the thinking about afterwards, it kind of frames it again and just takes a sting away somehow.
Yeah, like for me, none of the feelings and emotion stuff came like naturally. I had to like study it. And I remember I was probably about 26 or 27, and as part of my job, I was getting an introduction to dialectical behavioral therapy and what the concept of it was. And I got like handed a sheet of emotions, and I was like, I thought there were four. I thought we were like happy or sad or mad, like angry. Like I didn't really get it. And then this was me as a reader, like, but it was like something in my brain just connected, and I was looking at this whole page, and I was like, this makes a huge amount of sense of pattern that I've been noticing that I've not had words to. And now to this day, if I'm having problems with feelings, emotions, like I'll use a feelings wheel, and I use that to help me identify a feeling, and then like be able to kind of work with it. But I think that alexithymia for me, I've had to kind of almost manually make the connections myself.
Just as a brief aside, Nicola, you sound like you've encountered a few different therapies, so I'm curious as to whether you encountered narrative therapy at all. We could get into it later.
Yeah, that's a really exciting aside. I very much was involved in narrative therapy, and I got to learn from a therapist when I was living in New Zealand. And there was, I might still have the book that she wrote, but it really dawned on me then when I was like learning that how much narrative and story and understanding ourselves connects to having like a secure kind of like organised attachment style, and I'm talking about like earning that sort of secure attachment stuff, and how much it helps our brains to work better.
Yeah, I think it originated in New Zealand, didn't it?
I got two things. I'm lost. Straight out, I'm lost. And the second thing is, as soon as anyone says the word therapy, my mind shrinks. I go. It's like lemons in my mouth. I shrink up and shrivel away from it, and I try and retract within myself to avoid that word therapy.
I can completely understand why. I like to. I think it's been just such a special interest of mine, like understanding this, like healing in the mind. That I think I started reading about things like that for fun when I was about 18. Um, and I think that being able to have access to that knowledge and be able to kind of have it in our own hands and be able to kind of you compare it with our lived experience as well, and to be able to, yeah, like some of the tools that I found through exploring that have helped me overcome challenges. And I haven't, the reason I've liked doing it is because I've not had to open myself up to a therapist to do that, because I've learned it and then like being able to use that myself. It's been helpful.
It's the gleaning again, isn't it? It's like grazing as you go. You pick up what you need from what's available. It's a wee bit like anything you might even take as some kind of comforter. Reading and ideas can be a similar thing. But I understand what Jules is saying about that institutionalized kind of scenario and situation of in the relationship, power relationship involved in certain therapeutic situations, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and some of the horrors that have gone into our understanding of like into the academic understanding of the mind as well. Like, there's no surprise that we like that it is loaded.
Well, once you're through that door and you make that step, even reading a book, you're kind of under the influence, aren't you?
I won't get involved with anything NHS because everything I've had all been about making me compliant.
Yeah, that brings us back to something we were talking about at the start as well, about accessing like accessing healthcare and the barriers to it and the fear of it as well. Like, medical trauma, I think, will be not an uncommon experience.
I sometimes see going to see the GP is like, visiting a witch doctor, or, I was going to say a village elder, but I think I might have more respect for a village elder. But often I'm going down there to hear a story, to be given a narrative that might make me go home feeling a bit more relaxed about something I was concerned about before I got there. And that's all they sometimes do, is just sit and listen to you and look through a couple of notes and then say it's this, and here's this prescription, here's the script that you've got to learn and act on, and maybe it'll work. And so these are just wee thoughts sometimes I have about that relationship. Obviously, it can get a lot more serious than that, but just sometimes I feel I'm just going down there to be told a nice wee story that'll help me sleep.
Maybe that's why I preferred my herbalist, because she would tell me stories about plants and energies and energetics, and it was so much more interesting.
Cool. Better than Grimm's fairy tales, eh?
Yep.
I've not been very trusting all of the NHS since I've been held against my will on 2 occasions.
Yeah, that's a deep concern. Good point.
Yeah, it scares. It can be something that scares you from asking for help is feeling like you'll lose all your independence, eh?
Okay, guys, that's our hour up, and we're moving on to the 555 room, which I've put in the text there. Please leave this tab open so that your recordings can be collected.